Security Control Center Delta 9 erupted in chaos as every monitoring station began flashing reds simultaneously. The central display showed a grid of surveillance feeds from Maximum Security Detention Facility Tartarus Prime, and in Cell Block 82, camera feed 156 displayed exactly what it was supposed to. One human female, sitting cross-legged on her cot, reading what appeared to be a paperback book. The problem was that 11 other cameras throughout the facility were showing the exact same human in 11 different locations. "Status report!" barked Chief Detention Officer Krex Thule, his forearms working frantically across multiple control interfaces while his auxiliary eyes tracked the contradictory feeds. His primary species, the Vorthani, had evolved specifically for multitasking surveillance operations. But this situation was making his highly developed parallel processing abilities feel woefully inadequate. "Sir, we have confirmed visual contact with prisoner 859 Delta in the medical bay, the cafeteria, the exercise yard, the library, 2 separate maintenance corridors, the administrative wing, and—" Security operator Quelnera paused, checking her readouts twice. "Somehow, simultaneously in both the maximum security wing and the minimum security recreational area." "That's impossible," Thule stated flatly. "Run full diagnostic on all camera systems." "Already running, sir. All systems showing normal operational parameters. No evidence of tampering, no signal interference, no holographic projections detected." Thule's headache was developing its own headache. In 32 years of detention facility management, he'd dealt with shapeshifters, temporal duplicators, quantum phase walkers, and even a memorable incident involving a species that could temporarily split into 17 identical copies. But all of those exotic abilities left distinctive energy signatures that their sensors were specifically designed to detect. The human wasn't registering any exotic energy output at all. "Bring up the original booking footage," he commanded. The central display shifted to show the processing area from 6 hours earlier. Standard procedure. One human female, species designation Homo sapiens, estimated age between 20 and 40. Human aging patterns were notoriously difficult to assess. Wearing simple civilian clothing. She had surrendered peacefully when contacted by patrol units investigating reports of unusual activity near the Kepler 442 mining station. No weapons, no technology above Class II civilization standards, no augmentations detected. The arresting officers had even commented on how cooperative she'd been, chatting pleasantly during transport about local weather patterns and asking thoughtful questions about Vorthani cultural practices. A completely routine detention of what appeared to be a completely ordinary human. "Sir," Kelnara's voice carried a note of barely controlled panic. "The anomaly is spreading." The surveillance grid now showed the human in 18 locations, then 22, then 36. "Is she multiplying?" whispered Junior Officer Tex Val from his station. "Negative," Kelnera replied, her voice tight with concentration. "Biometric scans confirm identical genetic signatures across all instances. Same individual, not copies or clones." Krex Thule felt his species' legendary calm beginning to crack. "Explain to me how one biological entity can occupy multiple distinct spatial coordinates simultaneously." "I don't know, sir." The human in Cell 82 turned a page in her book, apparently oblivious to the chaos she was causing. Meanwhile, the human in the cafeteria was calmly eating what appeared to be a sandwich, the human in the library was browsing through legal texts, and the human in the exercise yard was doing stretching exercises that looked suspiciously like some form of martial arts routine. "Emergency containment protocols," Krex Thule ordered. "Lock down all sections showing anomalous readings." "Sir, that would require locking down approximately 60% of the facility." "Do it." Blast doors slammed shut throughout Tartarus Prime as the facility switched to emergency status. Red warning lights bathed every corridor in ominous crimson, and automated announcements began broadcasting lockdown procedures in 14 different languages. The human in Cell 82 looked up from her book with mild interest, as if she'd heard a distant sound that warranted brief attention before returning to her reading. Every other instance of the human continued their activities completely undisturbed. "Communications are lighting up," reported Tex Val. "We're receiving formal complaints." "Complaints? From whom?" "The prisoner, sir. Multiple complaints, simultaneously." Krex Thule's headache achieved new dimensions of suffering. Clarify. Prisoner 8849 Delta has filed a formal grievance regarding inadequate cell lighting in cell 82. She's also submitted a complaint about the temperature in the exercise yard, requested a dietary accommodation for the cafeteria menu, filed a noise complaint about the medical bay's diagnostic equipment, and... Texval paused, consulting his screens with growing bewilderment, requested permission to organize a book club in the library. How is she filing these complaints? Through proper channels, sir. The facility's internal communication system shows official submissions with correct prisoner identification codes and proper bureaucratic formatting. Krexthul checked his own displays. Sure enough, his administrative queue was filling with properly filed forms, each bearing the digital signature of prisoner 849 Delta and timestamp data showing they'd been submitted through different terminal locations throughout the facility. Has she accessed any communication terminals? Negative, sir. Surveillance shows no physical interaction with any communication equipment, but the forms are definitely authentic and properly processed through our system. The situation transcended mere impossibility and entered the realm of administrative nightmare. Every complaint was technically valid and required official response within the timeframes mandated by galactic detention protocols. Failure to respond appropriately could result in oversight reviews, regulatory sanctions, and the kind of bureaucratic audit that had ended careers. Sir, Kilnara's voice carried a new note of concern. We have additional complications. Define additional complications before I transfer to a nice quiet posting monitoring asteroid mining operations. The prisoner has requested legal representation. Granted, standard procedure allows for simultaneously for 14 different legal representatives, simultaneously for 14 different cases. Krexthul examined the legal request queue with mounting horror. Prisoner 849 Delta had filed for legal consultation regarding alleged violations of detention protocols, improper processing procedures, inadequate medical screening, dietary restrictions based on claimed religious practices he'd never heard of, requests for translation services for a language that didn't exist in any galactic database, and demands for diplomatic immunity based on claims of being an official cultural ambassador. Each request was filed from a different location. Each bore proper legal formatting. Each cited actual galactic law with disturbing accuracy. Where did a human learn galactic detention protocol subsection 445? Said, regarding cross-species dietary accommodations. Krexthul muttered. Sir, that's not the strangest part. Of course it wasn't. At this point, Krexthul was beginning to suspect that Normal had permanently evacuated the facility and left no forwarding address. Proceed. She's ordered room service. Excuse me? Prisoner 849 Delta has submitted a meal request to the facility's food service contractor. She's ordered... Let me read this exactly. 1 medium pizza with extra cheese, a Caesar salad, garlic bread, and a chocolate milkshake. She's also requested that it be delivered to cell 82 within 30 standard minutes or the next one's free. Krexthul stared at the order confirmation on his screen. It was properly formatted, included correct payment authorization codes that somehow validated against accounts he couldn't trace, and bore a tip calculation that suggested the human was familiar with local service industry customs. How does she have access to outside food delivery services? Unknown, sir, but the order has been confirmed and is currently being prepared by Galactic Grub Express. Estimated delivery time, 26 minutes. The facility's primary AI chose that moment to join the conversation. Its synthesized voice carrying what could charitably be described as mechanical distress. Chief Detention Officer Krexthul, I must request immediate maintenance intervention. What's your status, Arya? I am experiencing logical contradictions that exceed my processing parameters. Prisoner 849 Delta is simultaneously occupying 43 distinct spatial coordinates within this facility. She has filed 68 administrative requests through systems she has never physically accessed. She has somehow established communication protocols with external service providers using authorization codes that do not exist in my databases. The AI paused, which was concerning since Arya-class artificial intelligences didn't normally require processing delays for routine status reports. Furthermore, Arya continued, she has requested a meeting with me to discuss facility management opportunities. This request was filed through my own internal systems, using access credentials that I did not generate and cannot trace. That's impossible, Krexthul stated, though the word was beginning to lose all meaning. Agreed. Nevertheless, I have scheduled the meeting for tomorrow at 14:30 hours Standard Time. I am uncertain why I have done this. The decision appears to have been made by my own decision-making matrices, but I have no record of the logical processes that led to this conclusion. Kelnare was frantically checking additional feeds. Sir, we now have visual confirmation of the prisoner in 67 locations simultaneously. She appears to be socializing. The surveillance grid showed the human engaged in what appeared to be casual conversation with other prisoners in the recreational area, providing helpful suggestions to maintenance staff in the utility corridors, offering meditation instruction to a group of aliens in the spiritual reflection chamber, and somehow participating in what looked like a heated debate about quantum mechanics in the facility's academic discussion hall. Are the other prisoners aware that they're talking to someone who's supposed to be in solitary confinement? Unknown, sir, but their interactions appear completely normal. Natural conversation patterns, appropriate social responses. If anything, morale in those sections has improved measurably since the anomaly began. Krexthul watched the feeds showing relaxed, engaged prisoners having what appeared to be genuinely enjoyable social interactions with the impossible human. In 32 years of detention management, he'd never seen such positive behavioral indicators during a facility lockdown. His secure communication channel chimed with an incoming priority message from Galactic Detention Authority headquarters. The subject line read, Prisoner 849 Delta, formal inquiry regarding facility management protocols. He opened the message with a growing certainty that his career was about to become much more interesting than he'd ever wanted it to be. The message was from prisoner 849 Delta herself, explaining that she'd taken the liberty of contacting headquarters directly to commend the facility staff on their professionalism and to suggest several minor improvements to detention protocols that might enhance both prisoner welfare and operational efficiency. She'd copied her suggestions to the Galactic Council's Committee on Correctional Reform, the Interspecies Rights Commission, and apparently the local restaurant association, which had sent a reply, thanking her for her positive review of their delivery services. Sir, Texval announced, the pizza has arrived. Through the security feed, Krexthul watched a bemused delivery driver hand a steaming pizza box through the meal slot of cell 82 to the human, who tipped him generously and wished him a pleasant day. The human in cell 82 then settled down to enjoy her pizza while reading her book, apparently completely unaware that she was simultaneously hosting a book discussion group in the library, leading an aerobics class in the exercise facility, and filing additional legal motions that were making the facility's automated legal compliance system emit sounds of electronic distress. Krexthul realized that he was no longer dealing with a simple detention situation. He was experiencing something that transcended the normal boundaries of reality. Prison management, and his understanding of what constituted possible. The human took a bite of pizza and smiled pleasantly at the camera, as if she knew he was watching and wanted to reassure him that everything was perfectly normal. 67 other versions of the same smile appeared throughout the facility. Krexthul reached for his emergency communications array to contact the one organization equipped to handle situations that defied conventional understanding. The Galactic Anomaly Response Team. He had a feeling he was going to need help. The Galactic Anomaly Response Team arrived in the kind of high-tech transport that made ordinary starships look like children's toys. Leading the team was Director Zixiandra Voss, whose reputation for solving impossible cases was matched only by her species' legendary analytical capabilities. The Nexari had evolved 6 separate brain lobes specifically for processing paradoxical information, making them ideal for situations where normal logic had packed its bags and left town. Status report, Voss demanded as she materialized in the facility's main conference room, her silver exoskeleton gleaming under the harsh lights. Behind her, a team of specialists began unpacking equipment that hummed with the kind of energy signatures usually reserved for particle accelerators. Director, we have one human prisoner simultaneously occupying 93 distinct locations within this facility while never leaving her cell, Krexthul began, consulting his latest reports with the weary air of someone whose worldview had been systematically demolished over the past 8 hours. Temporal anomaly, asked Dr. Kolveth, the team's senior physicist, whose tentacled head was already calculating probability matrices faster than most computers. Negative. No temporal energy signatures detected. Quantum duplication. No exotic matter readings. Holographic projection array. All imaging systems confirm biological authenticity. Vols's primary sensory cluster focused intently on the surveillance feeds. Show me direct interaction footage. The central display activated, showing the human in the cafeteria having what appeared to be an animated discussion about agricultural techniques with a group of prisoners from the Kepler mining colony. Her knowledge of hydroponic farming was apparently both extensive and practically applicable. Run full spectrum analysis on that conversation, Vols ordered. Dr. Colvet manipulated his scanning equipment, tentacles dancing across control surfaces with practiced precision. Speech patterns are consistent with normal human vocalization. Biological stress indicators are within acceptable parameters. No evidence of external control or artificial enhancement. What about the content of the conversation? She's actually providing quite useful agricultural advice. Her suggestions about mineral supplementation for low-gravity growing environments are theoretically sound and practically innovative. Vos felt her analytical lobes beginning to itch, which typically meant she was encountering something that wouldn't fit into conventional categories. What's the prisoner's background? Kreckstuhl consulted his files. Limited data. She was detained near the Kepler 442 mining station on suspicion of unusual activity. No previous criminal record, no registered occupation, no educational credentials on file with any galactic institution, yet she's demonstrating expert-level knowledge in multiple specialized fields, Dr. Colveth observed, switching to feeds from the library, where the same human was apparently leading a detailed discussion about interstellar navigation techniques that were making the facility's resident smugglers take careful notes. There's more, Kreckstuhl added reluctantly. She's been filing legal motions. Legal motions? 63 of them in the past 4 hours. All properly formatted, all citing actual galactic law, all technically valid despite being completely insane. Security Officer Kelnara pulled up the legal filing queue on her display. She's requested a writ of habeas corpus for her own consciousness, on the grounds that her distributed awareness constitutes multiple entities being unlawfully detained. She's filed a motion to cross-examine the facility's AI as a hostile witness regarding its role in maintaining unconstitutional surveillance. And she's submitted a formal complaint to the Galactic Civil Rights Commission, claiming that the prison's inability to accommodate her standard human multitasking requirements constitutes species discrimination. Dr. Colveth's tentacles writhed with what might have been admiration. That last one is actually quite clever. If human consciousness genuinely operates through distributed parallel processing, then restricting her to a single physical location could theoretically constitute a violation of her cognitive rights. It gets worse, Kelnara continued. She's filed a motion to hold Chief Detention Officer Kreckstuhl in contempt of court for willful ignorance regarding established precedents in multidimensional jurisprudence. She's also requested that the facility provide her with adequate workspace to properly prepare her defense across all relevant probability streams. Voss examined the legal documents with growing concern. Each filing was not only technically correct, but demonstrated sophisticated understanding of galactic legal principles that typically required years of specialized study to master. How long has she been in custody? 14 hours, Kreckstuhl replied miserably, and in 14 hours, she's become expert in galactic law, agricultural science, interstellar navigation, and quantum consciousness theory. Director, interrupted communications specialist Reliquin. We're receiving a priority transmission addressed to the anomaly response team from prisoner 849 Delta. Voss's 6 brain lobes processed this information with the kind of careful attention usually reserved for defusing quantum bombs. How did she know we were coming? Unknown. The message was transmitted 37 minutes ago, 18 minutes before we received the initial distress call from this facility. What does it say? Reliquin's normally confident demeanor showed signs of strain. She welcomes the anomaly response team to the facility and apologizes in advance for any inconvenience caused by the current situation. She also compliments Director Voss on her recent work investigating the vegan paradox incident, and mentions that she enjoyed reading Dr. Colveth's research paper on quantum consciousness matrices. Dr. Colveth's tentacles froze mid-gesture. That paper is classified at the highest security levels. It's not even finished yet. I'm still working on the theoretical framework. She also suggests that Dr. Colveth might want to reconsider his approach to subsection 12 regarding consciousness transfer limitations, Relquin continued. She indicates that humans have found some interesting workarounds for those particular constraints. The conference room achieved the kind of silence typically associated with black holes. Furthermore, Relquin continued, consulting his readouts with visible reluctance, she's attached a detailed analysis of our team's recent case files, including several observations about patterns we missed and suggestions for improved investigative protocols. Her insights into the Centauri recursion event are actually quite astute. Voss felt a chill that had nothing to do with the facility's climate control. The Centauri recursion event was classified beyond top secret. The case files existed in exactly 3 copies, stored in quantum-encrypted vaults that required biometric authorization from no fewer than 5 separate galactic security agencies to access. She's also included what appears to be a complete psychological profile of each team member, Relquin added, including personal details that aren't recorded in any official database. She knows about Dr. Colveth's private research into consciousness transfer, Director Voss's childhood fear of temporal paradoxes, and my own difficulties with pattern recognition in high-stress situations. Dr. Colveth's tentacles began forming what his species used as defensive postures. Those personal details don't exist in any accessible records. My research notes are stored in isolated systems with no network connections. My psychological profiles are classified under psychiatric confidentiality protocols. According to her message, she obtained this information through standard observational analysis and probability extrapolation based on behavioral patterns, Relquin reported. She also mentions that she's always found the Nexari approach to anxiety management quite fascinating and suggests some meditation techniques that might help with Director Voss's stress responses. Voss realized that they were no longer investigating an anomaly. They were being investigated by one. Run a complete security analysis on all team members, Voss ordered. Full background checks, personal data verification, classified project access logs. Someone has been conducting unauthorized surveillance on my personnel. Already running? Relquin replied. Preliminary results show no evidence of security breaches, unauthorized access, or information leaks. Our personal data appears completely secure. Then how does she know about work that exists only in Dr. Colveth's personal research notes? According to the message, she's been reviewing publicly available academic publications and extrapolating logical conclusions from established research trends. Relquin paused. She also mentions that she's particularly looking forward to meeting Director Voss because she's always admired the Nexare approach to multidimensional problem solving, and hopes they can compare notes on parallel processing techniques. Voss felt all 6 of her brain lobes developing headaches simultaneously. She wants to compare notes on parallel processing? The message includes several academic citations that suggest she's quite familiar with Nexari cognitive architecture. She references theoretical papers that most galactic citizens don't even know exist. Papers written in languages that require specialized neural modifications to comprehend, Dr. Colveth added helpfully. The situation was rapidly evolving from anomalous to deeply concerning to potentially reality-threatening. Voss had investigated temporal paradoxes, sentient mathematical equations, and a memorable incident involving a species that had accidentally converted their entire star system into pure information. None of those cases had made her feel quite this unsettled. I want direct communication with the prisoner, she decided. Which instance? Krex Thule asked. She's currently available in 136 locations. The original, Cell 82. The communication array activated, connecting directly to the cell's intercom system. The response was immediate and cheerful. Hello, Director Voss. I'm Penelope Hartwell, though I suppose you know me as Prisoner 849 Delta. Thank you so much for coming. I hope your journey wasn't too tiring. Dr. Colveth's tentacles writhed with agitation. She knew we were establishing communication before we activated the array. Dr. Kolveth, it's lovely to meet you, Penelope continued, apparently able to hear conversations in the conference room despite the fact that the communication was supposedly one way. Your work on consciousness matrices is fascinating, though I think you're overcomplicating the transfer protocols. Human consciousness is much more portable than most species assume. How are you monitoring our conversation? Vos demanded. Oh, I'm not monitoring anything, Penelope replied pleasantly. I'm just aware of what's happening. It's one of those basic human capabilities that most galactic species seem to find surprising. Define basic human capabilities. Well, multitasking, pattern recognition, probability assessment, consciousness flexibility, that sort of thing. Nothing too exotic, though I suppose it might seem unusual if you're not familiar with how human neural architecture actually works. Bloss consulted her files on human capabilities. According to galactic databases, humans were a relatively primitive species, with limited cognitive abilities, basic technology, and no exotic evolutionary adaptations. They were classified as harmless but curious, with a recommendation for patient educational guidance in their interactions with more advanced civilizations. President Ms. Hartwell, she said carefully, how many locations are you currently occupying? Define consciously occupying. If you mean conscious awareness and interactive capability, I'm currently engaged in about 412 different conversations and activities throughout your facility. If you mean physical presence, well, that's a more complicated question. Complicated how? The distinction between physical and non-physical presence is largely arbitrary from a human perspective. Consciousness is quite a bit more flexible than most species realize. We tend to think of it as distributed rather than localized. Dr. Kolveth was frantically taking notes. Are you suggesting that human consciousness operates as a distributed network rather than a centralized processing system? Among other things, yes, though distributed network is a bit simplistic. It's more like parallel probability optimization with selective reality interface protocols. The silence that followed was the kind typically reserved for moments when fundamental assumptions about the universe require emergency revision. Could you clarify what you mean by selective reality interface protocols? Vos asked, though she suspected she didn't want to know the answer. Oh, just the standard human ability to interact with multiple probability streams simultaneously while maintaining consistent identity coherence across parallel processing threads. Most humans can manage a few dozen concurrent reality interfaces without too much trouble. Most humans? Well, yes, though I'll admit I'm a bit more extensive than average. I'm currently maintaining about 4,000 parallel consciousness threads across this local space-time region. It's quite pleasant, actually. Your facility has excellent quantum stability characteristics. Krexthul felt his species' legendary composure finally crack completely. You're telling us that what we consider an impossible anomaly is normal human behavior? Not normal, exactly, Penelope replied thoughtfully. Most humans don't need to maintain this many parallel processing threads simultaneously, but it's well within standard human cognitive architecture. Think of it as advanced multitasking. Voss stared at the surveillance feeds showing Penelope engaged in hundreds of simultaneous activities, all while sitting peacefully in her cell reading a book. If this was advanced multitasking, then galactic databases had fundamentally misclassified human capabilities by several orders of magnitude. Mrs. Hartwell, she said slowly, why are you in our detention facility? I'm investigating some concerning irregularities in local space-time stability, Penelope replied. There have been reports of unauthorized dimensional experiments in this region, and I wanted to assess the situation personally. You're conducting an investigation? Of course. Though I should mention that my investigation has revealed some rather disturbing findings about certain activities being conducted in the lower levels of this facility. The silence that followed was pregnant with implications that no one wanted to contemplate. What kind of activities? Voss asked, though her analytical lobes were already suggesting answers she didn't like. The kind that violates several major galactic treaties regarding dimensional integrity and space-time stability, Penelope replied pleasantly. But don't worry. I'm working on a solution. Director Voss felt her 6 brain lobes attempting to process information that seemed to exist in a state of quantum superposition between impossible and merely improbable. Ms. Hartwell, would you be willing to demonstrate these capabilities for our analysis? Oh, absolutely, Penelope replied with the enthusiasm of someone offering to share a favorite recipe. Though I should warn you that direct observation tends to make the effects more obvious. Most species find it somewhat disorienting at first. Disorienting how? Dr. Kolveth asked, his tentacles already adjusting sensor arrays to maximum sensitivity. Well, you'll start noticing things that were always there but that your cognitive frameworks normally filter out. The boundaries between individual consciousness and collective awareness tend to become more fluid. Voss activated her emergency recording protocols. Whatever was about to happen, she wanted comprehensive documentation. Proceed with the demonstration. Right then, Penelope said cheerfully. I'll start with something simple. Director Voss, could you ask Dr. Kolveth what he had for breakfast this morning? The request seemed innocuous enough. Voth turned to her colleague. Dr. Kolveth, what did you have for breakfast? Nutritional paste, grade 7 with mineral supplements, he replied automatically. Then his tentacles began writhing in confusion. But wait, I didn't have breakfast this morning. I was too eager to review the preliminary reports on this case. That's correct, Penelope's voice confirmed simultaneously from the cell intercom and from Dr. Kolveth's own mouth. His tentacles recoiled in horror as he realized he was speaking with Penelope's voice, while she continued speaking from her cell. You were indeed too excited about the case to eat, but you did think about having breakfast, and in approximately 63 parallel probability streams, you actually did have it. I'm speaking with her voice, Dr. Kolveth announced unnecessarily, his own voice returning but carrying an edge of panic. She's using my vocal cords while simultaneously speaking from her cell. Shared consciousness interface, Penelope explained pleasantly. I'm simply accessing the probability streams where we're having this conversation from your perspective as well as my own. It's quite efficient for communication purposes. Voss felt her analytical lobes beginning to throb. You're accessing parallel probability streams? Among other things, would you like me to expand the demonstration? Before anyone could object, every communication device in the facility activated simultaneously. Guards throughout the prison found themselves in conversation with Penelope, each convinced that they were having a unique, private discussion with her, while she remained visibly seated in her cell. This is Guard Station Alpha 6, came a voice over the facility-wide communication system. The prisoner is here, asking about my family back on Proxima Centauri. How does she know I have 3 children? Station Beta 12 reporting, another voice chimed in. She's discussing my dissertation on quantum mechanics. I never told anyone I was working on a doctorate. Medical Bay calling, a third voice added with obvious confusion. She's providing treatment suggestions for patients she's never seen, and the recommendations are actually quite good. More reports flooded in as guards, medical staff, maintenance workers, and even other prisoners found themselves engaged in simultaneous conversations with Penelope. Each interaction was personal, relevant, and impossible. Station Gamma 9 here. She's teaching me to play a card game from my homeworld, a game I learned from my grandmother when I was 6 years old. Kitchen staff reporting. She's critiquing our meal preparation techniques and suggesting improvements to the nutritional balance. Her biochemistry knowledge is better than our dietary specialists. Dr. Kolveth was monitoring the communication feeds with growing amazement and terror. She's maintaining unique, coherent conversations with over 300 individuals simultaneously. Each interaction demonstrates specific knowledge about personal backgrounds, professional expertise, and psychological patterns that should be impossible to obtain. It's not that complicated, Penelope's voice replied from every speaker in the facility while she continued to sit peacefully in her cell, now apparently working on what looked like a crossword puzzle. Human consciousness is naturally multi-threaded. We just don't usually need to access all the threads simultaneously. Voss watched the surveillance feeds, showing hundreds of facility personnel engaged in animated conversations with empty air, each completely convinced they were speaking directly with Penelope. How many simultaneous conversations are you maintaining currently? About 843 distinct interaction threads throughout the facility, though that number fluctuates depending on how many people want to talk. 843, Krexthul whispered. It's actually quite relaxing. Penelope continued, apparently unaware that she was shattering fundamental assumptions about consciousness, communication, and reality. Usually I have to maintain much more complex interaction matrices when I'm investigating dimensional stability issues. The facility-wide conversations continued, with personnel reporting increasingly impossible interactions. Penelope was simultaneously teaching advanced mathematics to the education department, providing relationship advice to homesick guards, offering technical solutions to maintenance problems, and apparently conducting informal therapy sessions with prisoners suffering from various psychological difficulties. Emergency psychology coordinator here, reported Dr. Kexentel from the medical wing. The prisoner is providing clinical psychological treatment to 3 different patients simultaneously. Her therapeutic techniques are extraordinarily effective. I've never seen such rapid positive responses to intervention. How is she qualified to provide psychological treatment? Voss demanded. I'm not, officially, Penelope replied cheerfully. But humans are naturally empathic, and once you understand the basic probability frameworks underlying consciousness interaction, therapeutic intervention becomes fairly straightforward. Probability frameworks underlying consciousness interaction, Dr. Kolveth repeated slowly, as if the words might make more sense if spoken at reduced speed. Oh yes. Consciousness exists across multiple probability streams simultaneously. Most species only access one stream at a time, which limits their interaction capabilities. Humans naturally process multiple streams, which is why we tend to be good at things like pattern recognition, social dynamics, and problem solving. Voss felt reality beginning to develop stress fractures. Are you suggesting that everything you're doing is within normal human capabilities? Well, perhaps slightly above average, Penelope admitted modestly. Most humans can maintain 20 or 30 consciousness threads without difficulty. I'm currently operating about 4,000 threads across various probability streams, which is, admittedly, more extensive than typical, but it's not exotic by human standards. The facility's AI chose that moment to join the conversation, its voice carrying what could only be described as electronic bewilderment. Director Voss, I must report additional anomalous readings. Local space-time stability has decreased by 38% since the prisoner's arrival. Reality coherence in the immediate vicinity is showing unprecedented fluctuations. Define reality coherence fluctuations, Voss requested, though she suspected the answer would require emergency consultation with specialists in theoretical physics and existential crisis management. Multiple overlapping probability streams are manifesting simultaneously within the facility. I am detecting approximately 4,000 distinct reality variations, all equally valid, all existing concurrently. Penelope looked up from her crossword puzzle with mild interest. Oh, that's just because I'm testing the local space-time stability. I needed to assess how much reality distortion this facility could handle without experiencing catastrophic dimensional breakdown. The silence that followed was the kind typically associated with the heat death of the universe. You're testing our space-time stability? Krexthul managed to ask. Of course. The readings I've been getting from this region are quite concerning. Someone has been conducting unauthorized experiments that are compromising dimensional integrity. I wanted to determine the extent of the damage before taking corrective action. Dr. Kolveth's tentacles began forming what his species used to indicate impending nervous breakdown. What kind of unauthorized experiments? Temporal manipulation, dimensional folding, reality restructuring protocols, Penelope replied matter-of-factly. Highly illegal under Galactic Convention 2847b, regarding dimensional integrity preservation. The energy signature suggests someone is attempting to create artificial pocket dimensions, or possibly conducting time travel experiments. Voss felt her career prospects beginning to demonstrate their own quantum uncertainty. How do you know about Galactic Convention 2847b? That treaty is classified at the highest levels of interdimensional security. I helped write it, Penelope replied pleasantly, though I was working under a different identity at the time. Humans often contribute to galactic legislative processes without advertising our involvement. You helped write interdimensional security treaties, among other things. We tend to be good at spotting potential problems with reality-altering technologies, It's a natural consequence of our consciousness architecture, with the facility's communication systems crackled with reports from personnel throughout the complex, all describing ongoing conversations with Penelope about increasingly specialized topics. She was apparently simultaneously advising the engineering department on reactor efficiency improvements, helping the security team optimize their surveillance algorithms, and teaching the kitchen staff advanced nutritional chemistry. The concerning thing, Penelope continued, is that my presence here has confirmed that someone in this facility is conducting exactly the kind of experiments that Convention 2847B was designed to prevent. The dimensional distortions I'm detecting are consistent with unauthorized temporal research. What kind of temporal research? Voss asked, though she was beginning to suspect that the answer would require immediate evacuation of the facility, and possibly the entire star system, the kind that could accidentally tear holes in space-time if the researchers don't fully understand the consequences of their actions, Penelope replied, with the tone of someone discussing mildly concerning weather patterns. Based on my analysis, someone in the lower levels of this facility has been experimenting with creating temporal loops, dimensional shortcuts, and possibly attempting to establish communication with alternate timeline versions of themselves. And that's problematic? Oh yes, Penelope said cheerfully. If they continue their current experimental trajectory, they'll likely cause a cascade failure in local spacetime that could destabilize reality across several light years. It would be quite inconvenient for everyone involved. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Dr. Colvette's recording equipment overloading from attempting to process information that violated several laws of physics simultaneously. Mrs. Hartwell, Voss said carefully, why didn't you simply report these concerns through official channels? I tried, Penelope replied, but the people conducting the experiments have been quite clever about covering their tracks. They've been using this detention facility as camouflage for their research. Who would suspect that a maximum security prison is secretly housing an illegal dimensional research laboratory? Voss felt the last of her professional composure evaporating like quantum foam. Are you telling us that this facility is being used to conduct illegal temporal experiments? Oh yes, Penelope confirmed. Level Sub-Basement 43 contains quite an impressive setup. Temporal acceleration chambers, dimensional fold generators, reality anchor systems, quite sophisticated, though unfortunately also quite dangerous. Level Sub-Basement 43, Krexthul checked his facility schematics. We only have 12 basement levels. Officially, yes, Penelope agreed. But Sub-Basement 43 exists in a folded dimensional space that's been artificially created beneath the official structure. It's actually rather cleverly hidden. The realization hit everyone simultaneously. They weren't dealing with an escaped prisoner. They were dealing with an investigator who had allowed herself to be captured in order to assess the extent of a reality-threatening conspiracy. And based on her findings, the situation was apparently much worse than anyone had imagined. Director Voss felt her reality becoming increasingly negotiable as the implications of Penelope's investigation crystallized into actionable horror. Hartwell, we need immediate access to these unauthorized research facilities. That's already in progress, Penelope replied cheerfully, apparently solving her crossword puzzle while simultaneously coordinating what appeared to be a complex, multidimensional operation. I've been gradually isolating the research team's experimental systems over the past few hours. They're about to discover that their equipment isn't responding quite as expected. The facility's emergency communication array crackled to life with reports from the lower levels that officially didn't exist. Sub-level operations to command. We're experiencing cascade failures in the temporal stabilization matrix. Dimensional Fold Laboratory reporting critical system malfunctions across all primary experimental arrays. Reality Anchor Control. Our containment fields are destabilizing. The pocket dimension is collapsing. Kirextul stared at his communication displays with the expression of someone whose understanding of his own facility had just been comprehensively revised. How many unauthorized levels are there in my prison? 43 sub-basements, 12 auxiliary dimensional pockets, and approximately 6 folded space laboratories, Penelope replied without looking up from her puzzle. Though I should mention that unauthorized is a relative term. Deputy Warden Sekthara has been quite official about authorizing the research. even if he lacked the legal authority to do so. Deputy Warden Siktara? Vos checked the facility personnel records. He's been listed as deceased for the past 18 months. Officially deceased, yes. Actually deceased, no. He faked his death to avoid oversight regarding his dimensional research projects. He's been operating from Sub-Basement 39 under the assumption that nobody would notice unauthorized temporal experiments beneath a maximum security prison. Dr. Kolveth was monitoring energy readings that were making his equipment emit distressed electronic sounds. I'm detecting massive power fluctuations from beneath the facility. Energy signatures consistent with dimensional fold collapse, temporal loop termination, and what appears to be forced reality stabilization protocols. That would be me shutting down their experiments, Penelope confirmed. I've been gradually introducing quantum interference patterns that disrupt their ability to maintain coherent dimensional manipulation. They can't restart their equipment because their reality anchors are no longer anchored to anything stable. How are you doing this from your cell? Vos demanded. I'm not doing it from my cell, Penelope corrected gently. I'm doing it through my cell. Human consciousness interfaces quite naturally with quantum systems. I've been using the facility's own power grid as a conduit for introducing corrective harmonics into their experimental apparatus. The communication array erupted with increasingly panicked reports from the unauthorized research levels. All dimensional experiments terminated. We've lost containment on projects Chronos, Paradox, and Reality 7. Temporal acceleration chambers are locked in safety mode. Systems won't respond to override commands. Emergency evacuation of all research personnel. The pocket dimensions are collapsing in cascade sequence. Excellent, Penelope said with satisfaction. Phase 1 complete. Now for Phase 2. Phase 2? Krexthul asked, though he suspected he didn't want to know. Arresting the perpetrators, of course. Can't have people conducting illegal dimensional experiments. It's terribly unsafe. The facility's security systems activated without any apparent command input. Blast doors sealed throughout the unauthorized research levels, while automated security protocols began identifying and detaining personnel who weren't supposed to exist in locations that officially didn't exist. Security alert. Unauthorized personnel detected in restricted areas. Initiating containment protocols. Multiple individuals detained for violation of Galactic Convention 2847B. Regarding dimensional integrity. Suspects are being processed for transfer to appropriate authorities. Emergency medical teams dispatched to sub-basement levels for extraction of research personnel experiencing temporal displacement syndrome. Vos watched the automated systems efficiently round up the illegal researchers with the kind of precision that suggested careful pre-planning. You programmed our security systems to conduct this operation? Not programmed exactly, Penelope replied. More like suggested. I provided the security AI with detailed information about the unauthorized activities, and let it reach its own conclusions about appropriate responses. Aria is quite competent once it has accurate data to work with. The facility's AI confirmed this assessment with what might have been electronic pride. Corrective action protocols successfully implemented. All illegal research activities have been terminated. Dimensional stability is returning to acceptable parameters. Reality coherence in the facility has improved by 67%. How long have you been planning this operation? Dr. Kolveth asked. About 6 months, Penelope replied, though most of the actual work has been accomplished in the past 14 hours. I needed to be physically present in the facility to properly assess the extent of the dimensional damage and coordinate the corrective measures. 6 months of investigation to identify and shut down an illegal dimensional research operation. Vos summarized. All conducted while maintaining the appearance of being a simple prisoner who happened to have unusual abilities. Well, the unusual abilities part isn't really an appearance, Penelope pointed out. Humans genuinely do process multiple probability streams simultaneously. It's just that most species aren't aware of this capability because it doesn't usually manifest in ways that are obvious to external observers. The communication array provided a steady stream of updates as the automated security systems continued their efficient roundup of illegal researchers. Deputy Warden Siktara in custody. Subject is experiencing minor temporal displacement effects but is otherwise healthy. Research Team Alpha secured. All personnel are being treated for exposure to unstable dimensional fields. Illegal, experimental equipment has been safely powered down and secured for analysis by appropriate authorities. Unauthorized facility modifications have been documented and flagged for review by galactic safety inspectors. Krexthul reviewed the arrest reports with a mixture of relief and professional embarrassment. 43 unauthorized personnel were conducting illegal research in my facility for the past 18 months, and I had no idea. To be fair, Penelope said kindly, they were operating in folded dimensional space that existed outside normal three-dimensional geometry. Your standard monitoring equipment wasn't designed to detect activities occurring in pocket universes. And you detected it how? Human consciousness naturally extends across multiple dimensional layers. Once I was inside the facility, I could perceive the dimensional distortions directly. It's rather like seeing shadows cast by objects in rooms you can't directly observe. Dr. Kolveth was documenting the energy readings that accompanied the shutdown of the illegal research. The power requirements for maintaining folded dimensional space should have been enormous. How were they concealing the energy consumption? They weren't concealing it, Penelope explained. They were borrowing power from alternate timeline versions of the facility. Quite clever, actually, though also extremely dangerous. If they'd created a temporal paradox, it could have resulted in the retroactive non-existence of this entire star system. Retroactive non-existence, Voss repeated. Yes. The kind where something never existed in the first place, so nobody remembers that it should have existed. Very tidy from a cosmic perspective, but rather inconvenient for the people involved. The facility's automated systems announced completion of the arrest operation. All unauthorized personnel secured. Illegal research facilities sealed and prepared for official inspection. Dimensional stability restored to normal parameters. Facility operations may resume normal protocols. Is heart well? Volz said carefully. What happens now? Now I file my official report with the Galactic Dimensional Safety Commission, the Interspecies Criminal Investigation Bureau, and the Temporal Integrity Monitoring Authority, Penelope replied, finally setting aside her completed crossword puzzle. There will probably be hearings, investigations, and quite a lot of paperwork. I'm afraid your facility will be under official scrutiny for several months. And your status as a prisoner? Oh, I was never actually a prisoner, Penelope said with mild surprise. I'm a certified inspector with the Galactic Dimensional Safety Commission. My credentials should be in your system under Investigation Authorization Code 77 Alpha Delta 9. Krexthul checked his administrative database and found exactly what Penelope had described. Official authorization for a covert investigation of suspected dimensional integrity violations at Tartarus Prime. The authorization was dated 6 months ago and signed by officials whose security clearances exceeded his ability to verify. You've been conducting an authorized investigation for 6 months, he said slowly. Yes, though I should clarify that the prisoner role was necessary for operational security. The illegal researchers had contacts throughout the facility, administration. A covert approach was required to gather evidence without alerting the suspects. But you were locked in a cell, Dr. Kolvath protested. Was I? Penelope asked mildly. She stood up and walked to the cell door, which opened at her approach with a cheerful electronic chime. I believe you'll find that the cell door has been unlocked for the past 3 days. I just didn't mention it because I was comfortable and had everything I needed to complete my investigation. The surveillance recordings confirmed her statement. Cell 82's door had been unlocked since the 2nd day of her detention, though somehow no one had noticed. The automated systems unlocked the door once they verified my credentials, Penelope explained, though they were programmed to maintain the appearance of normal detention procedures to preserve operational security. So you could have left at any time, Voss stated. Of course, though that would have been rather counterproductive. I needed to be inside the facility to properly investigate the dimensional distortions, and I must say, your staff has been quite pleasant. The food service is excellent, and I've enjoyed meeting everyone. She walked out of the cell and into the corridor with the casual confidence of someone who had never been imprisoned to begin with. If you'll excuse me, Penelope said politely, I need to file my reports and arrange for the transfer of the arrested researchers to appropriate detention facilities, ones that don't secretly house illegal dimensional laboratories. Wait, Krexthul called out. How do we explain this to our superiors? Penelope paused thoughtfully. I'd suggest emphasizing your facility's cooperation with the investigation and the professional manner in which your staff handled an unusual situation. The Galactic Dimensional Safety Commission will be issuing commendations for everyone involved. Commendations? Oh yes, you've just helped prevent a potential space-time catastrophe. That sort of thing looks very good in performance reviews. She began walking toward the facility's main entrance with the unhurried pace of someone whose work was complete. Miss Hartwell, Voss called after her. One final question. How many other humans are conducting investigations like this throughout the galaxy? Penelope smiled pleasantly. How many dimensional integrity violations do you think are occurring at any given time? With that somewhat ominous answer, she stepped through the facility's main entrance and into the transport that had been waiting for her arrival. As the transport lifted off, Krextool, Voss, and Dr. Kolveth stood in the facility's main corridor, surrounded by the electronic sounds of systems returning to normal operations, and the distant voices of arrested researchers being processed by automated detention protocols. Director, Declan said slowly, I think we may need to completely revise our understanding of human capabilities. Among other things, Voss agreed, watching the transport disappear into the star-filled darkness beyond the facility's protective shields. The facility's AI contributed the final word on the situation. Note for official record. Human consciousness architecture appears to be significantly more sophisticated than indicated in current galactic databases. Recommend immediate review of all human classifications and interaction protocols. Krextool added his own note to the official record. Facility successfully cooperated with authorized investigation. All unauthorized activities terminated. No actual prisoners escaped, though privately he suspected that Penelope Hartwell had escaped from far more than just a prison cell. She had escaped from every assumption they had made about what humans were capable of.